generally think that people respond to difference in a kind of conservative way, in that they're frightened of difference. And no doubt people find my work grotesque and affronting. But I go to great lengths not to push people away too far. I mean, I know that the work pushes people away, but then at the same time, I think it brings them in. The people are intrigued by them because I present their work in a kind of sympathetic way. I could make it much more horrible, much more disgusting, but I don't, because what I'm interested in is the rights and our responsibilities to the creatures that we create and change around us in the world. So I often present my creatures in the scenarios that I imagine in a very nurturing way. Well, I think that the work has many levels that you can enter it at. And I think the initial one is probably an emotive level. And I purposefully adapt the dynamic of empathy in the work. I try and gain the viewer's empathy so that they can have, they can imagine what it might be like to be that creature, or to be in that situation for a minute, and understand what it might be like to live that life. And I think if people feel something, then they might actually be interested in thinking about it and go into sort of the deeper levels of the work, which are about ideas. And all of the ideas that I respond to are ideas that are current in our society. So with the work called Atlas and Ghost, the idea that I'm working with there is the idea that we imagine the body to be flexible and changeable and mutable at every level, at a cellular level, at an aesthetic level. And it's that idea that it lets somebody like me, an artist, come in and say, well, yes, that's fantastic for us, and it's of this time and place. And eventually we're going to get, from this idea, great cures for diseases, and we're going to get all kinds of aesthetic changes made available to us. But at the same time, it allows us to imagine bodies that are completely different than we've ever thought of before. And that's what that work is about. No, I don't intend to be controversial at all. I actually hope that I can connect to the audience. And that's not a very kind of trendy thing to do, I think. I actually hope that people can come to my work and get something out of it, and come away thinking something and feeling something and being changed by it in an interesting and sort of, if not positive, but definitely sort of expansive way. Well, I'm not a performer. I'm a visual artist, and what I do is I make work and I put it out there, and it's really a conversation between me, the work, and the viewer. And I sometimes see people respond to the work and stay in the gallery and get something out of it, and that's very gratifying for me. But at the same time, I also see people just walk by the work and completely dismiss it. And that's something that I can't help. Well, I use children in my work because they bring out the best in us. We feel for them. Like in a work like this behind me, the girl is just as interested in the creature as the creature's interested in her. And if anything, the creature is the most vulnerable of the pair. But we feel that artificial nature is too close to real nature, her, and we feel uneasy about that. And we wonder about the value of it. So, yeah, that's why I use children. And I also use them because they represent sort of our genetic future. And in this work here in The Observer, the child is atop this mass of consumer goods, and he's just looking at us. He's not unhappy, but he will be the one who will judge what we do today with the environment and with this overproduction of consumer goods and excessive consumption they will judge us one day. Well, my area of interest has always been the definition of what we consider natural and what we consider artificial, and how that definition changes. That's why I'm interested in technologies that change that definition. Things like transgenic creatures, the ability to use stem cells, and those kinds of ideas that change to us our ideas of what is natural. So my world is in this intersection of natural and artificial. And this is my world in here, in there, and everything in there I just bring out into this world. And it could be a sculpture, it could be an object, it could be a photograph, which is an instant in time, it could be a video, which is a kind of story, narrative-based piece. I'm not particularly interested in the process of me making it, or the medium. I'm not particularly. What I'm interested in is this definition and what it means to us as a reflection of what it's like to live a life today. Yeah, well, the helmets are an interesting work for me. I'm really interested in automotive culture and what happens in the suburbs, stuff to do with identity, and I made these helmets for different shaped heads. Now when you see a different shaped head, even if it's marginally different, a small difference, it's very obvious to us. And it's very evocative. We think, oh gosh, maybe this child is sick, or there's a problem here. We notice it immediately. And I made these helmets for people that have got different shaped heads, but not because they're different or disabled, because I actually celebrate difference in my work, and that's one of the things that I'm interested in. But I made these helmets for these people because they ride motorcycles very fast. And to me, I thought that was a beautiful thought, that they're not disabled or different, but they're doing something active and beautiful and about identity. And the work itself is all about expression, like, this is who I am, even if I'm different, and embellishment, and expressing who you are, which happens a lot in automotive culture with customizing cars and motorcycles. You know, I get all kinds of responses, and often they're really extreme sometimes, and lovely, and sometimes they're really heartwarming. And I remember I showed The Big Mother, which is one of my works about a baboon-type creature breastfeeding a human baby, and I showed this work in New York, and a family came up to me, and the mother was like crying, and she said, oh, you know, I've got a disabled child, and you know, and this work is so important to me, and it means so much to me. This presentation of a connection, this tender connection between these two creatures and entities, I guess, and the feelings they have for each other, and the conflict that they feel too. Well, I'm really pleased that my work has been involved in this exhibition, because I think it's an unusual idea. It's not one that most people in the art world would sort of try to engage with, because yeah, it's a little, I would imagine, to be quite controversial, the idea that a work of art should be able to be understood by everyone. I mean, that's the kind of mythology of the artwork, but people in the art world don't believe that at all. In fact, art is a lot about elitism and conoscenti, people who understand art and are experts in it, and it's all about groups who become specialists. And I know this because I studied art history at university before I went to art school. Yeah, I think that my work does fit into this theme of the Biennale, because I think that a lot of people can come up to it and get something out of it, even if they don't get all the ideas that I'm interested in discussing. They'll get something out of it, even if it's just the spectacle of it. Like with The Long Awaited, Of course, it's about our relationship to transgenic creatures and the idea of servitude and how we treat other animals. But at its core, it's actually a depiction of love. And I think most people see that and have a kind of emotive response to it. This one here is a bit more complex. It's about the idea that if nature can select for beauty as it does with the peacock, if nature can say, yes, this is why this creature has evolved, just because it's beautiful, not because it's fast or aggressive or it can hide, just because it's beautiful, and I ask the question in the work, then is it possible for us to select for beauty when we change nature? When we change animal, can we change an animal just for beauty's sake or for the sake of art? With this creature here, with this very ornate back and these sort of improbable claws that it balances on. So I think that's a little bit more esoteric, but I think people still get a sense of what it's about. Well, my work evolved. Well, I studied painting at art school, and my painting was very realistic, and my drawing also is like almost anatomical illustration. I mean, really, it's so detailed. Then I decided to move into photography because the ideas that I was interested in working with seemed best expressed in a medium of its time, photography, and not painting, which has a lot of cultural baggage associated with it. And when I felt that I was successful in photography, I thought, well, if I can do this, I can do anything because I can just work with other people. And so I decided to make sculpture. And of course, I work with a team of people to make this work. And the process is that I spend time thinking about the ideas, developing them, and then I draw them out. And then I communicate with the people that work in my studio to express what I want the sculpture to look like. And I'm there all the time, just making sure that I'm having a big input in how it looks. And I'm just, I monitor and I'm involved in the process. But the work isn't limited by my own physical abilities. And that's why I work with a big team of people. I think that I started making this kind of work about 15 years ago, and I've developed it over time so that I used to work with people outside of my studio with production houses for film. This technology is widely available in the film industry. It's especially used in horror movies. And then I just thought, well, I don't need to work with other studios. I'll just create my own studio. And that way I have more control over the process and the materials we use and the way that eventually the work turns out. So that's how it worked. So 5 years ago, started to do everything in the studio. Always interested in moving forward and finding new ways to express ideas. And I guess I'm interested now in actually creating physical environments. I've had a go a couple of times at creating whole environments that are very immersive. And that's been quite difficult, but I'd like to get back to it. I mean, I like discrete sculptures like this. I think they can encapsulate ideas, but I think there's something about having a whole environment that you can walk into that sort of helps you suspend disbelief. I think this is what hyperrealist sculpture can do. It can help you connect to an idea because it's there, it seems real, and you can imagine it. Well, I work in silicon because it offers the closest approximation to the body. And over the last 5 years, spent a lot of time making that even better, developing it. and so that the skin is translucent. The silicon is translucent, and then it becomes opaque, just like our skin does. So the first layers of these sculptures, light goes through, and then it hits a different opaque layer of silicon. There are 7 layers of silicon. It's another layer of silicon through the first 3 layers and then bounces out, and that's why it seems very lifelike. The first sculptures I made were very flat, because the silicon was flat and opaque, and the skin had to be painted, whereas this new silicon doesn't have to be painted as much.
I think the last question is about Kauno bienalė. Do you know what this means? Kauno bienalė, I don't know how to say it. Is the thing that when you see hyperrealistic sculpture or something like a computer graphic, the human is always thinking maybe this is human, and then this was a hit when you think this is not human. It's the Kauno bienalė that the thinking is a robot or something else. It's not human. Then you think it's human. When you hit by your mind is hitting this is not human. And you how you manage to you have like a bridge from Kauno bienalė. The people who's looking to your work is always thinking that he's alive, he's breathing. How you manage to create that so warm and so cozy world that you're seeing and you think this is life? How is managed to make it so
lifelike?
So
well, I think the work depends on it looking as lifelike as possible. I mean, I could make these works out of paper mache, and they would still be about the same idea, but they would be a bad vehicle for that idea to express it. I think these works need to present a situation that's kind of believable. But you know, at the same time, I also do other works like these works here, which are a kind of a mixture. They're representational in that they're a drawing of a flower or of a landscape, but they're also literal in that they're hair growing in skin. So I feel like I've been able to sort of transcend the qualities of this hyperrealist sculpture and combine other ideas. Yeah, like in these works, they're about the idea of like this botanical illustration of a flower. They reference the idea that we've always tried to catalogue nature and identify it, and this is new nature. You know, and we can see that it's artificial because it's a square. That's not real nature, but it's also natural in that it's natural hair growing, and here are these orifices. And even though they are a bit abhorrent in that they're a bit grotesque, you know, these orifices, but at the same time they're actually quite beautiful as well. These beautiful new flowers, new nature. So I can combine lots of ideas, lots of levels of ideas in one situation, and that's very exciting for me. Well, you know, sometimes I think that the hyperrealism of the works is a kind of problem in that people judge the work in that they think, oh, does it look real or not? And that's the only level that they reach in the work. Can I believe it or not? Is it well done or not? And really the work is about ideas, like this work here, the bottom feeder. It's about, you know, if you could create new life, and we are creating new life all the time, what would that life do? And this is my proposition. And what is our responsibility to this new life? How do we feel about it? How does it affect what it means to be human? What it means to be an author? What it means to be the creator? Are we going to be like Dr. Frankenstein and be a bad parent? Or are we going to embrace these new creatures and look after them? And will they be part of evolution? And does this change our ideas about evolution? Because is it different? It's just faster, but essentially it's just an organism that's adapting to a new environment. I am constantly amazed at real nature. I think the real nature that exists on our planet is astounding. And there's life everywhere, and it's completely adapted to that environment. And this is very impressive for me. And I think that anything that I create could not even compare to what actually exists. Nature's inspiring for me, and I'm interested in the environment. Like, this work is about the idea that animals eat rubbish, and they do, and they die from it. Birds, fish, fish eat the rubbish in the sea, they die from it. Birds eat anything that's bright, and they die from it. They starve, and that's part of the environment that we live in today. And these are all stories that feed into making a work like this, which is a rubbish eater, and it's created a face on its back, so that we can look at this beautiful anus rather than see the shark-like face that does the dirty work for us of cleaning the environment. And that's what sharks do. They clean the seabed. But we are frightened of sharks, so we treat them badly, and we fish them out of the sea, and we just eat the fins for soup. So these are all stories that go into the production of one of these works, and that are all there and available to the viewer if they're interested in the work. And I think that I try and gain the interest in the work by making this piece as realistic, as conceivable as possible. And that's why they have to have a realism to them, so that they seem conceivable to the viewer.